Well, hello and welcome. And today we have a very, very interesting story, the NCA Brouhaha, how we may call it. Now, once upon a time, we were all enraged about Suba because it was believed that whatever machine it was they had to plug into the telco companies, they call it telco companies, no, these guys haven't plugged anything into our machines. They were supposed to plug their systems into the telco machine so that we can regulate how many calls came into the country so that the government could make revenue. So we were angry, and indeed amongst the top 10, or if I say top 3 corruption in this country, Suba comes to mind. So then it comes to the time when the contract ends, and then funny enough, the same people who defended Suba, i.e. the government machinery, defended Suba once upon a time, are saying no. And we, the citizens who could not have enough of this and wanted to get rid of it, are now saying, well, why do you want to get rid of Suba and bring another company in? We are going to dissect this issue and bring it to bear to understand why we have gotten here. With me in the studio is Kweku Karting, who is an Honourable Member of Parliament for Obuasi West. He's also a member of the Finance Committee in Parliament, so he understands what's going on. Why do we want Suba out now? And why did why do we want to keep them now when once upon a time we wanted to get them out? My name is Nana Sakwa. This is PM Express. Don't move, we're coming straight back. Well, thank you very much for staying, and we are looking at the NCA, Suba, Afrowave, Brouhaha going on, trying to dissect to see what's happening. As I introduced earlier, my brother Kweku Karting, Honourable Member of Parliament for Obuasi West, Member of Parliament and also Member of the Finance Committee is here. And then we have Kwame Ba Achamfu, who is Principal Manager for Regulatory Administration at NCA.
At the NCA.
Yeah, at the NCA. Thank you very much for coming. It's only for God and country when you get, guests to come at this time. But this is how the whole thing works, right? Now, the National Communication Authority, NCA, has given Suba Info Solutions Ghana Limited up to Wednesday, November 11th, 2015 to pack up its equipment and vacate the NCA premises. In a letter dated November 9th, 2015, signed by the Director General William Tavy, the telecoms industry regulator said it requests Suba to take custody of the equipment located at the MCA premises. The letter added, the NCA would like to advise Suba to vacate the NCA premises by November 11th, 2015. This is in keeping with the NCA's order to Suba in a letter dated October 30th, 2025. No, probably 2015. 2015. To cease operations in the telecom sector because it had no license to do so. The telecom industry regulator, in another letter dated November 4th, 2015, then asked telecom operators to welcome Afrowave Telecoms Ghana Limited as the licensed operator to monitor the flow of international traffic for revenue assurance on behalf of the state. NCA acted on the advice of the Attorney General, who in a letter dated September 25, 2015, gave the green light for the Suba contract to be terminated because what the AG approved is different from what was being implemented. Meanwhile, NCA has stated in a letter to the Attorney General that Suba has failed on a number of very critical aspects of its job, such as doing the real-time monitoring of call traffic. But the State Revenue Agency, Ghana Revenue Authority, has warned telcos to keep working with Suba or face sanctions as per Communications Tax Service Tax Amendment Act 2013 Act 864. The GRA noted in a letter dated November 5th, 2015, that in the same way a company appointed by GRA to audit hospitals don't need a license from the Ghana Medical and Dental Council, Suba does not need a license from the NCA. The Minister of Communications, Dr. Edward Omanibuama, also announced that there will be an intersectorial meeting on the matter at the presidency that will bring some finality to the matter. That is why we are here today. So those who originally loved Suba now hate it, and those of us who hate it now are supposed to love it. Let me start with you, Kwasi. Once upon a time, we could not, be in a hurry to see the back of this company. Somehow now, we don't see why the company have to go.
Yes. Once upon a time, the Ghana Revenue Authority signed an agreement with Suba sometime in May 2010. And their job was to monitor, if you like, the work volumes of the telcos, that is the telecommunication service provider, MTN, Tigo, for the purposes of revenue accounting. So it was required that Suba should then go to the telcos and ensure that they got the exact volumes of communication traffic. Somehow that was never done. And government then said Suba was doing good work for government. Many of us disagreed and said, well, if you are saying that the telcos are not allowing Suba to really monitor them, then why are we paying Suba? Because Suba was being paid from the public purse. And that was why many of us took the view that the payments that were made to Suba were improper and called government names. Now, in 2013, an amendment was made in the Communication Service Tax Act. And that amendment now said that if you are a telco and you don't allow government to put their devices into the notes of the telcos for the purposes of revenue accounting, you commit an offense. So the law in 2013 now provided more opportunity for government to do monitoring. I have made a point again and again that government, the Minister for Communications, and all those who are now desperate, pushing for Suba to be removed, should also be telling us what has happened to those payments. Are they going to get those payments back? They can't do that. Why? Because they set up a committee and told us, the people of Ghana, that everything was above board. And that report was adopted by cabinet at the time, and that is how they cleared Suba. So moving on from there, we said, well, if a new law has been brought, we want to see how it's being implemented. What the NCA now turns around to tell us is that in spite of the amendment and the law we made, that telcos, if you don't allow proper monitoring of the volumes of work, of your revenue for the purposes of revenue accounting, you commit offense. Still, the kind of monitoring we want to see is not being done. That is what the National Communication Authority told us, and I say us as member of the Communications Committee of Parliament, of which I'm a deputy ranking member. And we found that surprising, so we decided to meet the stakeholders involved. And then that information was contradicted by all the stakeholders except NCA. When I say the stakeholders, the GRA, the Suba itself, all said, oh, we're doing what we are required to do under the law. So we went around, and as far as we could see, we saw those devices plugged into the telcos. And so we concluded that the monitoring was being done.
Did you take any technical eyes with you on your rounds?
No, we didn't.
You didn't. Okay.
We didn't. We relied on the what Suba themselves told us, and we relied also on what the telcos they were monitoring told us. But more importantly, we relied on the government department that has the expertise for revenue monitoring, also in coming to that conclusion. And when I say this, now I'll jump to, so that is where we are. So when some people now say that if you want to terminate the contract of Suba, honestly, it shouldn't be my worry. Mm-hmm. But when the Attorney General tells you that if you terminate, we probably will be facing judgment debts or settlement debts, that is where we are worried. I have no difficulty. I understand Suba's contract would expire in May next year. If government wants to replace Suba with another company, that is fine. That shouldn't be something we should be worried about. So that is the first point. But having given that background, the real issues that I think the public ought to be interested in is what Suba is doing, as far as we on the committee can understand, is revenue monitoring. If you go to the Ghana Revenue Authority Act, you go to the Financial Administration Act, that is a function for the Ministry of Finance and the Ghana Revenue Authority. In the Communication Service Tax Amendment Act, it says the Minister of Finance, in collaboration with the help of the Minister for Communications, would monitor revenue of telcos, and that is understandable. You know, the telcos work under the NCA as a regulator. So even though you have an overall mandate to go and decide how you do revenue monitoring, it would be useful if you got the help of the regulator of that industry. In the same way that if the GRA wanted to do auditing of hospitals as they indicated, they would need the support and the help of the Minister for Health. It makes a lot of sense. The problem we're having is that the Minister for Communications and the National Communication Authority are interpreting that to mean that they rather have a mandate, and on this occasion, I will land right now, for revenue monitoring of telcos. And so a contract that is supposed to happen between a vendor and Ghana Revenue Authority, understandably, and I always tell them that you people do not even have the competence to do the tax calculations. You just don't have the competence. The NCA and the ministry, your expertise is the technical operation of the telco's work, and in revenue, you can only assist, but you cannot be. However, the ministry has taken such a strong position, so difficult to understand, that they should be controlling the monitoring of revenue. And so a contract that has been signed between Suba and GRA. GRA itself is saying that everything is fine. And the letter you wrote, it sent to the telcos that as far as we are concerned, the vendor we have a contract with to monitor revenue is doing well. Continue working with that vendor. If you don't, you violate the law. And this letter is just from 3 days ago. And what? Then the Minister for Communications writes to the Attorney General that give me advice if I want to terminate this contract. You, the Ministry for Communications, terminating a contract between the Ministry of Finance and GRA on the one hand and a vendor. And then the Attorney General writes back to say, well, you can't terminate, subject to the question I am asking, and I'm happy Mr. Bancham is here, he is from NCA, that if the NCA and...
Land so that you can...
Quickly, I'm landing. If the NCA and the Ministry for Communications consider that there's anything wrong in the operationalization of the contract between Suba and GRA, I think the proper, decent, honest thing to do is for the Minister for Communications to go and sit with his friend finance minister and to say, this man, the way he's doing the revenue, we should be concerned as government. Then GRA, that has signed a contract with Suba, will begin to tell Suba that you are not doing things right, so stop, or do things right. What you don't do is the kind of things that the Minister for Communications and the NCA have been doing. Completely wrong, and I think they should just back off and allow GRA to do their work.
Mr. Jafo, let me start from one, the NCA defended Suba for doing what they were supposed to do. You know, remember the morning shows when telco after telco said, look, we are not plugged into any Suba thing, so they couldn't give you any details unless we give them a disk to tell them how much calls have come through our system. And that, you know, there was no automated thing. So the state got angry that, well, if that's what's happening, then why are we giving them all these millions on a monthly basis? And then you defended that, no, you're doing a good thing. But here it says that, no, they're not doing even the basic things that they are supposed to do. I mean, were they doing it and then they stopped and then not doing it? When did the turnaround come so that, you know, all those on the other side who were, you know, hated Suba now love Suba, and those who defended it are now against it?
Right. I would want to take it from the point of being a public servant and the honorable member being here, who I report to him as a representative of the people, and to be of help technically. You asked of the technical eye, and this is your show, honorable. So I'll give you the technical help.
But let me introduce you properly. Mr. Bachamfu is the Deputy Director, Monitoring and Compliance. So he's the man we have to speak to.
Oh, he's a big man. He's a big man at the NCA.
He's the man we have to speak to. What were they doing that they're not doing now?
What it is, as Honorable mentioned, two words: revenue and traffic. Two different meanings, two different approaches.
Okay.
It is true that the name revenue belongs to the Ghana Revenue Authority. Yet traffic can be treated such that you can derive your revenue calculations from it. So you can monitor your traffic and say, this is my traffic information. And then you give to the experts as to whatever they want to do with that traffic volume. If they want to put a certain rating on it or a certain tax table on it to get certain revenues as is due for an organization. So the approaches are different. He mentioned from the stage, and you are also interested in the stage where it came out that Suba, who had been contracted and for 3 years have not been able to perform their duties. There's a history to that. And I'll take you to as far back as the year 2008.
Okay.
And maybe to the year 2007, so that we get a very good flow and chronology.
But because of time, if you just like speed up, I want to hear it all, but speed it up.
Yes. It so happened that in 2007, there was a new law on communication service tax, which is an exercise duty tax. That's 6% on every call that is made in Ghana. So then RAGB, Revenue Assurance Governance Board, which was had the oversight responsibility of VAT and customs and all these revenue agencies, IRS, had a tender, and 3 companies submitted tender. One was selected. It went through a stage of going through the entity tender committee, our Ministry of Finance, also with the help of NCA, again, given the technical eye. It went to the Central Tender Board. Unfortunately, it got to a stage when governments changed, so that contract was not concluded. It so happened that in 2009, as a new government came in, they considered that they could also look at international traffic. So first of all, the first intention was to look at local traffic, because that is what the taxation was on. But international traffic came in. So there were 2 laws. One for the local and then one for the international. So that was how come there were 2 contractors. But even when these two contractors were given the award, for the NCA, we thought it wise. We had to put them together because you don't go to a certain operator and then because you have two agencies, then they plug to the same interfaces and it's coming to the same central government. So we wanted them to sit together and put out a design which could draw out this information. This information of traffic could also be used by experts to do revenue assurance and sort of. It so happened that that situation of putting connections to telco operators was in court.
But we were still paying them.
How was this?
This was in
2010?
That was in June 2010. So because of this situation, it was not possible that any of the contractors could have a connection to the service providers. So it was true that there were no connections, and so there was no real-time information. With this, do you fault the contractor? Fair. So the government set up a committee which had the three ministries, really: Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Communications.
So then the defense to say Suba was doing what they were supposed to do, what was it based on?
No, if I will give you your answer.
Oh, okay.
So the government put out a committee, interministerial committee, from three ministries: the Attorney General's, Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Communications, Ministry of Finance, with the agencies, Ghana Revenue Authority, National Communication Authority, bringing them all together and say, assess the situation and see what is the best way. Let's remember that when somebody is awarded a contract, there is an investment made, because for him, they had acquired their systems and they were to connect to the node. So there had been a certain capital investment. Honorable has the report of that committee, of which I am a member, and I don't have that report, which is fair. But I remember so well that we said, we are looking at their capital investment and how far, and the bit that they have been able to do, and see how do we defray their cost with what they have been doing. So in that report, Honorable may confirm that the rate of which Super was supposed to be paid was reviewed downwards because they were not doing a complete work as it was supposed to be done. But then, with the new law coming in, so that was one case closed. With the new law coming in where it was not supposed to be two contractors.
So basically, it wasn't their fault. They were willing to do, but there was a court case, they couldn't plug in, but the contract had already been signed. So you just review the original figures downwards because you signed the contract already.
Yes, yes. So just to satisfy Honorable's fear of going for a judgment debt, the approach or the conclusion of that committee on what had been invested then and the work that had not been done was to review the rate at which the entity had to be paid. So that was one case settled. Now, we have the law which encourages or brings the two ministries together, Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Communications together, and say you should have a common platform. And that is really the best approach, because for government or for convenience, you wouldn't want to have two separate or three separate contractors on a service provider tapping into a similar interface looking for the same information. So again, these same ministries and agencies sat around the table and said, what is the best way forward? Should we maintain our current system of contractors, or we should move into a license regime? We have done this over a period there are certain lessons which you've learned. What is the best way? At that time, the contract for the international monitoring contractor had run out. And the NCA had even gotten clearance from the procurement authority that 4 agencies could bid to do that as well. When we went to the table, we said, with this new law, let's suspend that. You don't go in and bring in another one. What can we do with the situation that we have? We have a Suba contract which is supposed to end May 2015. The NCA introduced to the committee what is supposed to be the optimized approach into a license regime so that we don't use contractors. There are disadvantages of using a contractor. And then there are certain advantages of using licenses because of how our law is structured.
I think we are interested in the time Suba's contract is going to end and what time Afrowave starts.
I will get there. So this meeting was in May 2014. And Suba's contract was supposed to end May 2015. What the committee agreed was that it would take time to license any entity to do a common platform. Because when we are moving into a common platform, you don't want this contractor, supplier.
Common platform here would be revenue, traffic, local and international.
That's right. So the components of the 2 words that he mentioned, both for traffic monitoring or revenue monitoring and all other ancillary services could be added to this common platform. Let's remember that for us as a regulator of the communication space, our issues are not just with revenue monitoring or traffic monitoring. We need more than that, and there are many other things you could do with a common platform. So that was why the NCA sold that idea to the committee. And we accepted and said, we have a pathway. Now, our pathway, and one of the critical points for us to consider was that we have 3 options, really. Do we allow the international bit to follow, such that there's no monitoring, because the NCA will suspend its procurement. There will be no monitoring of the international traffic. The operators will submit what they submit to the NCA, and then the calculations of revenue is done. Or do we extend the scope of Suba to cover the international traffic monitoring? Or do we, at any time that the license entity comes into place, start the international so that by May, when the Suba contract ends, it takes over? What I just said, the latest option, was just showing that you were going to still have, at a certain point in time, two people tapping into an operator or connecting to an operator. So that was off. Do we just let it follow? We said that could not be wise, because then we are not optimizing on government revenues. So we considered that let's extend the scope of Suba to do traffic monitoring. You see, the difference in traffic and revenue monitoring is, for example, for international traffic, for example, you can't go with any approach other than traffic monitoring, because the revenue is being made by the people out there. Locally, you can choose to do traffic monitoring or revenue monitoring, because here the strikers are sold here. So rather than doing the painful job of knowing how many minutes he made before you apply the tax table, you can go for the easier option of where, okay, if the guy scratches a card and he loads 10 Ghana cedi, you take your tax. But the communication service tax is a usage tax. The fact that you scratch that card doesn't mean you've used it. But the tax is taken immediately. So there are many considerations why really. So we got to the stage where we said it has to go to cabinet. It was approved. I think the approval came in August. Stakeholder consultation started somewhere in September. In December, the tender was opened that we want licensed entities to run a common platform in Ghana.
Which Suba was already doing?
No, that is a different concept. Suba is not doing. Suba is not doing the scope. For the licensed entity, it has 14 components. If you like, we can.
Are you talking about the amendment, the kind of monitoring that the amendment said ought to be done? You're saying that that was not what Suba was doing? Well, I can read that to you and you see whether the 14 you just mentioned is anywhere in there.
No, be patient. Be patient.
No, see, I want
the essence of the common platform.
You've explained it.
Yes.
So that you don't have different companies, you know, I come and plug into Vodafone, Kweku comes with a machine to plug into Vodafone.
Yeah.
I'm sure even they wouldn't agree.
Good.
So I should come with a machine that does all these things and plug into it.
That's right.
How much less was Suba doing? What was Suba, were they doing trafficking?
Yes. So
were they doing revenue?
Yes. So let me explain. So when the extension of the contract, as Suba had as their scope of work, was for domestic traffic, or let's say calls that are generated in Ghana. But for international traffic, which are coming into Ghana, that part was extended to them. So that's why it can only be traffic monitoring. That started somewhere in November 2014.
Let's move forward because of timing. You see, once upon a time, because of legal reasons, Suba was not able to plug into the system. Somehow, I think you managed to pass the law and now they were able to plug into the system.
Yes, so...
But then, once they got plugged in, their work was not satisfactory.
As at the time the committee was considering the issues of the common platform, the aspects of revenue monitoring, which I said the approach could be where when the scratch card is loaded, you have that information. Suba had that information, really, except for one operator at that time who had not agreed for Suba to connect to them. Let me again talk about the constraints of such a service contract.
I have to really move you forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. To move forward, we can't jump the fundamentals, and the fundamentals are this: the constraints of that service contract is that the contractor has to sign a non-compete agreement with the service providers. He has to sign non-disclosure agreements with the service providers. At any point in time, when you are into this sort of covenants, it is difficult for a regulator to come in to go beyond your covenants.
I need to take a break here, but I completely lost that. I still want to find out that at the beginning stages, Suba was not able to plug into the system because of legal reasons. Not their fault. They've signed a contract. So we sit at the table and say, look, instead of giving you 10 cedis, look, let's give you maybe 6 cedis because due to no fault of yours, you aren't able to work. Being gentlemen, they agreed. But then you've come out the letter again to say that, look, they are still not working. So I think my viewers would want to find out, now there are no legal constraints, why aren't they working? What's the problem now? So I'm going to take a break and then we'll come back to that. So move.
migrants will ever undertake. There is no going back.
Well, thank you very much for staying. A couple of messages from WhatsApp. Says, good evening, and I ask Koku Kwating, is he aware of the clauses that were smuggled into the legislation by Suba and GRA just to favor their interests without the recourse to the AG? And this is from Kwame Ting in Koforidua. Nana, thank you. I like your program so much. But sometimes you in the media must sit up and reveal the corrupt practices in this country. People in government hide behind people to create businesses to steal from the estate. NSTAQ says, not long ago, government and its communicators defended the same company. What has changed now? Simple. The owners has made some money from the state, so it should go for the next company to come and make some money too. This one says, Suba issues have resurfaced. I hope this time the contract is not full of controversies. And this is from Papa Tieku in Koforidua. And I suspect there is a conspiracy between Finance Ministry and Suba Info to defraud the state. Very, very sad. From Al Hassan. And I think two ministries will have to collaborate to find a solution to this impasse. So that Jonathan in Cape Coast. Quickly going to Facebook. This one says, can't we blacklist this company from bidding for government contracts, then allow messing various sectors of our fragile economy? And then KD Wonder says they are like Aquavitan. They should be sent packing. Ahmed Kasim says, I hope this is not another way of deliberately causing judgment debt to share the booty. That's sentiment of people out there.
Yeah, well Kwame has made the point. I think in all these matters, the matters that should be of concern to us is that, yes, the Ministry for Communications, working through the National Communications Authority, which is the regulator of the telecommunications sector, has licensed another company, Afrowave. And they
won a bid.
You say
they won a bid. Afrowave won a bid, tender, and they won.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. To do what? To do something they call interconnect clearinghouse. That matter is in court. It has its own issues. But you know what has happened? The NCA has written to the telcos. When government, whether somebody just said somebody has smuggled in some clauses, that is a matter to be settled within government. But once government signs a contract with a company, and the contract expires in May next year, why should the NCA write to the telcos and say that for the purposes of revenue monitoring, don't do business with Suba, with whom the Ghana Revenue Authority has signed a contract. Rather, do business with a new company called Afrowave. Afrowave doesn't have any contract with the GRA. What Afrowave has is a provisional license to do interconnect clearinghouse,
which may include the revenue monitoring.
But the question is that if you want to include that, it is which sector's responsibility to sign an agreement for revenue monitoring. So you know what happened? After the NCA wrote that letter, I think it might have been written by the National Communications Authority to the telcos. Listen to the response of the Ministry for Finance, and it was signed by the Deputy Minister. The Ghana Revenue Authority is mandated by law to account for all the tax revenue to government, and therefore NCA, purporting to award a contract that takes that power from GRA, is gross anomaly. We would be grateful if this anomaly could be quickly rectified to avoid any embarrassment to government. Signed, Mr. Atoforsin, Deputy Minister for Finance. And this letter was dated as recently as 31st July 2015. What am I saying? What the public is concerned about is GRA under its mandate, signing an agreement with the vendor. The NCA now struggling, bending over itself to say that I want another company, Afrowave, to do revenue monitoring because it is related to the telecommunications sector. And in spite
but
of...
you were part of the committee that agreed that...
Which committee was that?
Well, Kwame was saying that the committee agreed that they were going to now license rather than do contracting.
That's right.
License?
Right. Instead of going to just get a contractor, you put a license out so people bid for it.
Let me tell you, interconnectivity, it's something that the NCA has to do. They are claiming that once you get some company to do ICH, the Interconnect Clearing House, then the revenue monitoring, that is a mandate of the GRA, would be taken care of anyway. So you GRA, yours will not be necessary. What the public is curious to know is that how government should work? Should the Ministry for Communications not go and sit with the Minister for Finance and say that this contract between Suba and GRA is perhaps not serving us? I don't know. I think I'll quickly land on that.
No, before you land, if I understand you clear, Kwame clear that said that they decided that instead of getting everybody to come and plug in, we should narrow it down to one.
That's right.
Through a license.
Look, what he's saying is
through a license. If I can come in here,
monitor traffic, and he belongs to monitor revenue.
It's good that now you have understood the point. And what Honorable is craving for, and that is how you ended your introduction, that this minister says this way, this agency is writing this way. Tomorrow at the presidency, all the three ministers, Minister of Finance, Minister of Communications, Minister of Justice, they will sit together at the presidency and know what is the way forward and what is the best way to have either revenue assurance by itself, or as to whether NCA has to do, as Honorable is saying, the things that he has to do his way. This decision, I'm sure, but by lunchtime tomorrow, Ghanaians would have had that.
Will we know who smuggled that, mysterious contract?
I don't know, but the understanding I got from the Aegis, legislation is that the GRA brought a contract to them and say review. They reviewed it and said, perhaps they said it was okay, I don't know. And then the GRA, when they say the contract is okay, or that it should vary some part, government now has to go and sit with the private person with whom the contract is being signed with government and say that we want these changes or not. What I understand these questions to mean is that when the GRA sat with Suba, there were certain terminations. It's not how even the contract works. So termination, in the event we want to terminate, what and what should happen? They said, the Attorney General is saying that what is in there now is not what I saw. The question of when an entity that can sue and be sued, when they are signing a contract with a private entity, whether the advice of AG is binding or they can vary it in a way, it's something I said government must deal with. The way it is being presented, that somehow somebody smuggled something into something, is one of the misleading things being put out to justify what I think is wrong. If government thinks that the GRA boss has done something, why? Government should punish. But the last point, just as recently as the 5th of November, the Ghana Revenue Authority is writing to the telcos and telling them that I have heard that the NCA say you must rather do business with Afrowave. Please, remember that I have a contract with Suba and you people are obliged to do business with Suba, otherwise you break the law. Just 4 days ago. Now he says tomorrow or so, the presidency will hold a meeting of these matters. Yes, they may make some decisions, but there are a couple of them that will come up, and that will be of public interest.
But one thing
which ministry is going to have a mandate for revenue monitoring? That will come up. The ICH matters are in court. We would see whether government wants to defy the court and proceed with the ICH. If Afrowave is not doing ICH, on what basis? What are the procurement requirements here, and have they been complied with? That Afrowave would be doing not ICH, but something they don't have a contract, they don't have a license to do, monitoring the way we are seeing it. These are matters that I hope tomorrow the presidency would resolve But it should not be made to look as though tomorrow, whatever the presidency resolves, the people of Ghana would swallow it. If there are wrongs in there, those wrongs will be criticized and an attempt to be made to correct
Before my time runs out, I still want to find out at which point did Suba, not work become unsatisfactory, and what did they do?
That one is coming purely from the NCA. Look, the GRA that signed a contract with Suba says after 2013, when the law now made it ended all the litigation, and Suba could now connect. As far as GRA is concerned, the contract is working well.
No, but so
NCA is saying that it's not working well.
NCA is going to tell us why.
Wait, Nana, I mentioned there were two components. The NCA agreed to the pathway where Suba does traffic monitoring of international traffic.
Sure.
From November to May 2015, when their contract was supposed to end. At that time, the Minister of Communications wrote to the Ministry of Finance and that...
I have 1 minute.
Yes, that we now have a licensed person to monitor the traffic, as agreed on the pathway. So it will no longer be necessary to renew Suba's contract. Suba's contract already...
How come it was renewed?
No, but...
So there was a certain counter correspondence from Ministry of Finance.
Yes, but they disagreed with you.
Fine, so that is why...
The NCA had stated in a letter to the Attorney General that Suba had failed in a number of very critical aspects of his job, such as doing real-time monitoring of coal traffic. So
the straight answer to that is that with the analysis that the NCA has done over the work that was extended to Suba, are they satisfied with it? The NCA answer is no.
No.
And therefore, because they are looking up to say...
You engage with the Minister of Finance. This thing is not
and that
work.
Is why there's tomorrow, Honorable.
But Kwame, before you go, there's this important bit that has to be put across. And NCA, you would know, you have informed Parliament that you are bringing an amendment to the Communication Service Tax that now would allow you to be privy to the content of people's communication, to be listening into our calls. Please go and tell the superiors at the NCA that Ghanaians would fight against this.
Honorable.
To listen into our calls.
Honorable.
So drop it immediately.
Honorable, I read that and now I believe that you really said that. I didn't want to believe the story I read this morning, but I want to disabuse of the minds of all Ghanaians that it will never happen, that without a law on lawful interception, the phone calls of Ghanaians will be tapped in.
But you want the law to do that?
It is not necessary. It is not necessary at this point in time to even have...
If you want to withdraw it, you let us know. But we'll resist it. Just tell your story.
That's one topic that has to be dealt on its own.
Please.
Folks, this has
so you are withdrawing the
Express
amendment?
been talking to Kweku Kwating and Ba Achamfo. As I said, tomorrow we'll be back to do this all over again. Thank you for watching.
It has not been tabled.
The document you took to
it has not been...